Stout standing here again, and this is following my newest schedule. If you haven't seen what that is, check my last video out, it's in the description, and it shows you what my schedule will be for what videos are coming out on the same day every week. I'll tell you all of that, because I thought the channels I like the most bring out the same videos every week, so I thought I'll try and emulate that. Anyway, because it's Thursday, that means Airsoft reviews on tactical gear. Now, I'm starting quite simple on this, just because it's gear that I have readily available to me and without any planning, because it was easy. So I'm starting with gloves. Now I've got 3 pairs of gloves to go through. I'm going to first go through the pros of them, then go through the cons of them, then go through my final opinion of them, if, you know, that's probably the best way to describe it. So I'll move on. These are the first gloves I'm going to review. These are the Delta Force paintball gloves. I don't know if that's their proper name, but that's what I've always called them. I won them at a paintball place at one of my mate's birthdays once, years and years ago. And when I started Airsoft, I was like, great, got these, sorted. So we'll go through the pros of these first, and we'll move on from there. Now, my main pro with these gloves are the palm of them. The material on this is incredible. It's nice and padded, yet it's really grippy, so you're not going to lose grip on your expensive airsoft guns with all their sights and accessories and crap on them. You're not going to drop any of that. You're not going to drop a magazine if you go for it out of a tactical vest nice and quickly, or a plate carrier. You know, really nice texturing on there. They're nice and grippy to feel as well, which is great. The next pro I'm going to go on to, or the next good point, is the back of them is, as you can see there, it's got this black plastic across it, which is quite nice and hard. It does withstand a sniper hit. I've been hit right on the back of the hand by a sniper while I've been wearing these, and I actually barely felt it, which was pretty impressive, because I know the guy's rifle is pretty damn strong. Now, that's really good, because obviously it's going to stop you taking hits, but then it does slightly reduce movement of your knuckles and fingers. You're not quite as dexterous as you would be otherwise, which, you know, I'm pretty sure you can get over with Airsoft, because you're going to be having your hands in pretty much one position for the whole time, which is alright. Next of my favourite points of these gloves are the wrist Velcro. Now, that seems a bit of a stupid thing to have as a favourite point, but I've got very thin wrists and quite big hands, so having something that I can adjust how tight it is on my wrist is great, because I can never get a pair of gloves to fit me properly. So, you know, that's always good. Now, those are pretty much the only pros of these gloves. I'm not sure whether you can tell by how I've said that, but I'm not a great fan of these gloves, so I'll go through the negatives of these now, and then we'll move on to why I'm not a great fan of them. Now, this plastic, although it was also a good point for them, is also a really bad point for them, especially for me, because when I make a fist with them, I cut across the front of all my knuckles on both hands, which is incredibly painful, and then running around for the rest of the day cutting your knuckles every time you bend your fingers really isn't nice. I'd have to take a break like every hour or so and flatten my hands out just so I wasn't slicing into my fingers every time I moved. It was ridiculous. I don't know whether that's just my hands or this type of glove, or maybe it's just the quality of plastic I put on these gloves, because I know they were only being sold for like £3. So that's quite bad, really, gloves that actually harm you while you're wearing them. It's stupid. Another really bad point about these is they wore out very, very quickly. I've got holes in the tips of most of the fingers on these gloves, just because they've worn out, they've worn through just from me using them, and I've only used them like 3 times, which is a bit ridiculous, really. And the final kind of really bad point for me was I had to, as you can see here, chop the index finger off my left hand. Obviously, I'm left-handed, so it's my trigger finger. Because with the plastic bits on, I couldn't actually get my finger in the trigger guard to be able to shoot, which was absolutely terrible. So I cut that straight off at the kind of hand, basically at the knuckle, just so I'd get the full range of movement on my trigger finger, and then I used that finger for any, like, you know, messing around with the hop-up and stuff like that, because it was already out, which was always good. Although it did, obviously, leave me with one finger out in the open, which, obviously, it was going to get hit, and it did, right on the nail there. The first time I ever played after I cut the fingernail off, running around, you know, perfectly fine. Round comes in, hits me right on the tip of the nail. Absolutely wrecked. I cannot tell you how much that hurt. It was ridiculous for what it was. But, you know, that's why I don't really like these gloves. They're not great quality. They wore through. I had to cut bits off them. But I suppose their pretty much only redeeming factors are you can adjust how tight they are, and they've got a nice palm on them. But, you know, you can get plenty of other gloves like that. So if I were looking at gloves, I definitely would not waste even the £2 or £3 these were being sold for on these. Personally, not a big fan of them. So we'll move on to the next pair of gloves I've got now, which are these. They are big, badass black leather gloves. These are actually for rappelling, which I thought would double up quite well because obviously I do a lot of climbing, so I thought it would double up quite well if I ever go outdoors and need to handle the rope nice and quickly. Now, I do really, really like these gloves. They're madly warm. I've worn them all the way through winter, even when it was snowing. I cycled like all the way, everywhere pretty much, so these are great. They're incredibly warm because they're leather. They're nice tight fitting on my fingers, so you don't have like excess material flapping around. They've got really good padding across the backs of the hands. Here I think it's maybe closed cell foam, I think it is, covered by more black leather, which is really good. They're nice and lightweight, and also, I don't know whether you can see on these gloves, hopefully you can, they haven't put any padding on my index finger, or for Airsoft my trigger finger, on both gloves, which is great, so I didn't have to cut it off so that I could use my gun. That was really good. They're incredibly solid gloves, these. I've, you know, trekked through bramble, bushes, all sorts of spiky plants. I've put my hand down on glass, all sorts. And none of it's gone through. They're really comfy to wear, and they're nice and, again, adjustable around the wrist. Very tight fitting on my wrist, which is great. Although, the one thing I didn't like about these gloves, the main thing I didn't like about these gloves, there's only two things I didn't like about them. The main thing was they cut off just below the palm here. If you can see, they're not very long gloves, and I prefer them with a bit more of a tail so I can put my sleeve over that and just give myself a bit more protection, because that's what gloves are for. They protect your hands from the elements. So I prefer, personally, my gloves to extend a bit so that, you know, my shirt and the glove actually overlap, so I've got just that little bit of extra protection. Now, the only other, I suppose, point I didn't like of these was that they are a bit cumbersome to wear. When you bend your fingers, obviously, because it's leather, it makes everything a bit harder to do. And because it's quite thick leather on the front, I found it very hard adjusting stuff like the hop up on my gun, that kind of thing. It just makes movement a little bit more awkward because it's very thick leather on the front. It's obviously to stop rope burns if you're rappelling, so they're perfect for that. I can't wait to try them when I do that. But for Airsoft, it's a little bit too tough, really. These were, I think, about £10, which for that money, these are unbelievable. I highly recommend these to anybody who's starting Airsoft. I absolutely loved them, and the only facts that I didn't like were that, again, it cut off very close to the palm, and that it's a little bit too thick on the hands for me, personally. But, again, they're not designed for Airsoft, they are designed for rappelling, so they're good for that. I still keep them in my pocket at Airsoft just in case I decide I want to put these ones on. So I keep them on my person all the time at Airsoft, even though they're not my primary gloves. So if, I don't know, someone rips their glove apart and, you know, I can go, here, I've got a spare pair, they're really good, use these. Or if I just decide, you know, my hands are getting a bit cold, put on these, nice and warm, still protective because of all this closed cell foam on the back of them. Absolutely great gloves, solid leather, then almost never going to wear out, I don't think. No matter how much I use these, I don't think they're going to go. Which is why I love them, just maybe not so specialised for Airsoft. So we'll move on to the last pair of gloves now, which are my current gloves, and these are Mechanics Fast Fit gloves. These are absolutely fantastic. I love them to bits. I've been wearing them when I'm cycling now, because it's a little bit warmer than it was when it was snowing, but still a bit chilly on your hands. So I've been wearing them while I'm cycling now. As you can see, I tend to double up any kit I can to as many uses as I can possibly use it for. So these gloves are really comfy to wear. They're nice, lightweight. The front of them is this like suede leather, so again, nice grip on the gun. It's a very similar feel to the front of my other gloves, my black leather rappelling ones, but it's much thinner, so you've got much more kind of dexterity on them. They're not as cumbersome when you're wearing them, I think is probably the best way of describing that. They're on the back of them, although they're not hard padding like on my other gloves, they are actually slightly padded on these grey bits here, which is the main section, and then the back of the fingers, these black areas, are... personally, I don't know what material it is. It feels almost like the neoprene of my wetsuit, but I don't know whether it is. I don't know for sure whether that is, and there's no tags on the insides of them to tell me what material that is. I'm sure it was on the leaflet they came with or whatever. Now, these gloves I also like because, as you can see here, they've got the extra bit after where it goes tight for your sleeve to go over it, so they just give that extra doubled up layer of protection from anything, like if you're putting your hand down on glass or, I don't know, whatever, if you're crawling through mud, anything like that. They're really good for that. I also double them up. This is slightly Airsoft unrelated, but if you can see this little almost semicircle of suede here, I also double these up as gloves for archery. I hold my bow, and that little circle of leather is just on my knuckle here. So on cold days where the fletching would usually slice straight over my knuckles and absolutely destroy them, it doesn't do that, and that's great. So these double up as archery gloves, cycling gloves, airsoft gloves, anything I need them for, really. So I always have these to hand. In fact, I think recently, usually when I go out, it's phone, wallet, keys. Now it's phone, wallet, keys, gloves. I always have these on me, whether I've just chucked them in my bag, they're in a pocket, anything like that. I'll always have these gloves with me, just because they're amazing. Probably the best gloves I've ever bought. Well, not bought exactly because they got shipped to me free as a rewards thing from a shop, but, fair enough. To buy these are about £20. Don't know what, I've just realised I'm saying all this in pounds. I don't know what any of this is in dollars if you're watching in America. Unfortunately, I'm in the UK, so it doesn't really, I don't work in dollars. I'm pretty sure you can find out, pretty sure you can find any of these gloves on almost any Airsoft website or outdoors website, something like that. Because I know these gloves are even being sold in a shop where I get some of my climbing equipment from, which was pretty cool to see them there. So these are my favourite of the gloves. Obviously, they're the ones I use. I've just gone crazy about how much I love them. These are the ones I would recommend the most to people, unless they're in very cold climates, where I would recommend the harder leather repelling gloves. And as I said when I was reviewing them, the Delta Force paintball gloves, don't waste your money on them, even if it's only £2 or £3. They're pretty worthless in my opinion. So that's been my kind of video for my first tactical gear review. Been going through gloves, I've got tactical vests to go over, plate carriers, all that kind of stuff. I've got helmets and headwear to go over. I've got all of that kind of stuff, which is going to be coming in the next weeks. This is always on a Thursday. All my Airsoft gear reviews will be on a Thursday. It might be expanding slightly from tactical gear to Airsoft gear that isn't guns. So including, I don't know, uniforms, that kind of, or anything I personally use in Airsoft that I don't class as guns. So, that can be pretty extensive, but there's a few things I want to go over with why I use it at Airsoft, but not for Airsoft, if that makes sense. I'm sure it will do when I do the video. So that's going to be the end of this video, guys. If you've liked it, please like it. Obviously, it's kind of self-explanatory. If you've enjoyed the video and want to see more every Thursday for tactical gear reviews, maybe subscribe. If you want to check out my previous video, in the description for that, there is my schedule, which you'll then be able to see what I'm doing for every day of the week and what videos are going to be coming out those days. And again, if you have any questions on any of my videos or anything mentioned in them, or just a question in general, either dump a comment down or send me a message. I'll try and reply to every single one of my which I should see them all because I've got it linked straight to my email, so it'll come straight through to me. I'll reply as soon as I can. And have a great time between now and the next video. I will see you in a bit.